that little thing that you're trying to do has so much benefit to yourself, and you are worthy of it so much that you'll start doubting. Like your doubts are just like on a scale of benefit and how the world will benefit because
So welcome to the show, Ina Ari Cripes. I know you just said that to me. I
cry, cry me a river.
know.
How about Ina? Ina
Ina.
is good enough.
So, can you describe what reality shifting is for those who don't know?
So basically, you understand that what you have right now is the result of your perception of the external world. And you get to decide whether you like this life script or what's going on around you, or you don't, or you perhaps want to change it. And then understanding the basic principles of quantum physics and neuroscience, whether you are what influences the external reality. You can start molding that life around you towards your liking based on your inner state. So the only thing that has to change for you to kind of create a new life scenario is your inner state and the way you perceive the external world. And then the world, based on this quantum physics principles, starts reflecting that back to you, not the opposite, because usually we're seeking for evidence from the external world first before we confirm that something new happens in our life. But this is like a completely different approach to it, which is quite the opposite of what traditional logical thinking is moved towards.
You said about the internal world influencing our external world and how it kind of defies logical thinking. What is that logical thinking?
Well, we have this beautiful thing, which is our mind, our logical mind. And our mind basically translates everything that happens to us, everything we see, everything we hear, we sense in. So we rely and trust 100% on this translation mechanism, which is our mind. And like shut other ways of translating what happens to us. So we trust that this is the only and the only right way to understand what's happening around us. But this is a very small, very narrow way of seeing things and feeling things, where the world is so much bigger and two people can look at the same thing or have the same experience and describe it completely differently based on their personal belief system and perceptions. So we both can go on a weekend somewhere to, let's say, some tropical place. But if I don't like water, I don't like sun. Example, my father had a fair skin and would always burn. Hence, he hated beaches, and we never really were hanging out at the beach side. And, I never learned how to swim, even though I grew up in the peninsula, because for him, it was a bad experience. He was having, a burned skin at the end of it all. And another person, like many people here right now in Florida, right, enjoying the beach side. They want the tan, they want these wonderful things that the beach side and the sun has given them. So, same everything, right? Same reality, which is kind of neutral, but we given it a color. We describe the flavor of it. We describe the taste of it based on our personal perception.
How would you say, with personal perception, how much of it do you think is autopilot? Because I've been wondering about this with my own life is how many of my beliefs, how many of the things like my natural reactions to things, how much of it is like an autopilot response instead of it being I take a couple of minutes or seconds to think things through? Because you're either perception thing, me and you could go somewhere, you have a great time, I have a horrible time, we go somewhere else, I have a great time, you have a horrible time. But same experience, different outcomes from our
Sure.
perception. But I wonder how much of that is influenced just by a default response. It's like, there's your response.
Right, exactly. I'm afraid that you would not like the answer because that number, based on again the neuroscience is telling us, is quite huge. It's 90%, if not more, of our waking time we're spending on autopilot mode, where we are just a reaction of our subconscious programs that we've picked up during our lifetime. And we are aware, where we basically just aware of everything that's happening to ourselves, and therefore become responsive versus reactive, it's a very small fraction. And just to kind of make it simple for the viewers and you to understand, I have this very simple exercise that I teach my students actually in the Reality Masters course. And we're doing it as an active exercise for reality shifting because nothing will change until you master your awareness. It's just simple as that. And so this is the exercise during the day. Uh, Try to stop and pause whatever is happening around you and tell yourself this simple phrase: I see myself and I see my reality. That's all. Two sentences, right? I see myself, I see my reality. And tell me how many you can do during the daytime. Like if you'll go tomorrow, count how much of those repetitions you can do of that awareness throughout the day. You'll be surprised that the hours would go by and you would be so engulfed into your day-to-day life and responses that you would be awakened only maybe once or twice, or just really rare amount of times where you can just like pause and reflect on where you are, what are you doing at that moment. And so the idea is here is to increase that frequency of where you can stop and say, I see myself, I see my reality, because now you're pausing those programs and you can start the installations of the new ones that are actually benefiting your ideal life scenario. And so it's as simple as that. Just try to pause as frequently as possible during the day and realize I'm here and now. I see myself, I see my reality. And write that number down. Like, how many times a day can you do it? And of course, I don't want you to be a zombie and just go throughout the day and like, okay, I see myself just to prove me wrong. It's like a very genuine um, audit of thyself to see how aware you are. Because you know, I have meditated for quite a while and I practice this. And even myself, I catch myself sometimes fallen asleep, what I call, like we are asleep throughout the day. There is a meeting, there is a person, there is something, there's a project, and you're just engulfed into that. You're like asleep. And then just hours later, you're like, what was I doing? Where am I? What's happening? Like how to, like, am I aware? Or I just was just following the script, right? Just like an actor follows the script and I was not writing the script. So yeah.
Sounds like dissociation.
Yeah, in a way you have to dissociate from the current environment and the current life and the belief system so you can recreate something new. Because the stronger you're attached to something, uh, the less you're willing to let go, and actually the less you're aware of what you should let go, right? And what you should create. Because from those moments when we can pause and become aware, this is where we can start visualizing or simulating the feelings of the new scenario we want to create. It's like, for instance, if you're an author and you're writing a script to a movie, right? You have to set aside some time for writing that script. Because if you are just following the script, because we are the actors in the movie, which is called life, right? We're following the script. And so it's not in my power, right? I'm just following like day to day the dues and whatever responsibilities. But if I want to change it, how am I going to be changing it if I'm always following it? That means I have to stop and kind of drop what I'm doing, at least for a split second, for a minute, and kind of start being proactive about writing the script. And when I say writing, obviously, I don't mean you like stop and take a pen and a paper and start writing, but at least mentally, right? And, that's not secret of, how the reality can be influenced. We all heard of secret and manifestation. It became a trend in the last decade or so. And they all kind of repeat the same thing. It's like visualize, visualize. And it's all well and good. There is a lot more to it, obviously, because otherwise, much more people would have achieved what they wanted. But it's all the senses that have to be involved. Your perception, your feelings, your emotions is the triad of things. And then of course your thoughts and your visuals. But yeah, it all starts with pausing. You have to stop. Have to stop doing what you're doing and start doing something else, right? So if I want to get in shape, I have to probably stop been lazy about not exercising, or I have to stop eating badly and probably start some new habits, right? With the reality is the same thing. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to practice.
Really quickly, if you're enjoying this episode, why not give it a like? All right, back to the episode. So, this was something that kind of caught my eye. You said in one of your videos that you have to embody the person that you want to become before it actually happens.
Exactly.
So, how can people do that while building the new habits? Because if a mind is very logical based, it's obviously going to want evidence that this is actually, who we are. So, say if I wanted a graphic designer for the sake of argument, but I have no physical evidence that I am a graphic designer, how cause how would I stay in that state of mind without my physical reality reflecting that? Because I kind of personally I struggle with that, to stay in that mind frame where there's no evidence. But if we have to be it internally, but there's no external reinforcement, it kind of clashes, I want to say.
Exactly. So, it goes down to the vision, right? Even if we look at some successful people who've built businesses or companies, or some artists who created a masterpiece, they didn't have the masterpiece or the business already built to believe it, right? But what they all had vision. And the vision and belief in that vision was so strong, it carried them through the diversity and through the obstacles and through not having that evidence right away. I mean, the reality fabrics is made of energy, and you have to, before you're going to see that materializing for you, you have to charge it with that energy. And when you charge it enough with that energy, which is your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, over time it will take a material shape. Just like an artist, where does that masterpiece is born? In his head. It's his vision. Then it becomes palette and brushes and colors and canvas, and the canvas eventually turns into a masterpiece. But it's the vision that carries him through. It's the belief that what he's doing makes sense and it's going to be great, and it's going to portray or transmit his values or whatever he's trying to deliver to the audience, right? His vision. Same with the business, right? The person believes that his solution solves a problem, and it's only the belief that carries him through. And then he finds, based on that idea and the belief in that idea, he finds the sponsors, he finds the resources, he's able to communicate his vision to someone, because what are the investors do? They actually invest in the vision, right? And of course, some calculations, some analytics you have to prove. But at first, if it already exists and it's already successful, nobody probably would be looking for investors, right? But it's not there yet. It's like semi-raw. It's still just an energy, just a vision. So it's the same thing. You kind of have to understand that this is the vision, and it just takes a little time materialize. But energetically, everything exists at the same time. Everything that we can imagine means it already exists, and it exists here and now, because that's the only kind of moment that we have. So you have to connect to it energetically and keep believing that that's what you want, as long as it's your true desire. It's very important to segregate from like some desires that were influenced by other we were influenced by other people versus our true desires that come from our heart. But when they come from our heart, they actually come true the easiest. Then you'll have the energy when you're going to rehearse yourself as a great graphic designer. You're going to savor that moment. You're going to be inspired to take a course and learn a skill, because it's not just about visualizing, right? It's about taking action. But if the action does not have enough belief, if you're full of fears and doubts, obviously you're going to be like one step forward, two steps back. And that's why we need that awareness to make sure we have that strength to overcome the fears and doubts, and constantly focusing on the outcome that already exists. We're just connecting to that outcome from now.
I've said this on the show before, if you actually want something, but it's I think I've said this. If you actually want something, it's a lot easier because you tend to find that you try to talk yourself out of it. But if you don't want it, you try to talk yourself into it.
That's perfect.
A personal example. I tried to talk myself into a cinematography business. That didn't last long, and I'm constantly trying to talk myself out of doing this podcast.
You know, it's so interesting, Daniel, because I had a reel and I said exactly that thing. And it's so interesting how not many people understand that idea. So I'm so stoked you actually get it too, like you understand it too, because that's also came from my own life analysis. I'm like, how do I know what's true, what's not? And then I looked back at some decisions that I make and what they led to, right? And I'm like, you know what? Those things that were really coming from my heart, I was trying to talk myself out of it because your immediate response never lies. Your immediate, you know, right away in the split second, you know, it's just right here. And then all of a sudden, when it's yours, but you understand it's illogical, it's just then the mind kicks in, right? And the mind, like, oh no, what about this? What about that? And so it starts infiltrating you with fears and doubts, and then so the logic starts to scare you and you try to talk yourself out of it. And vice versa. Sometimes there's like a little ick towards even greatest idea, right? But you're like just there was no butterfly in the beginning. But then all of a sudden you try to bargain with yourself. It's almost like you had this little friend chat and you're trying to convince it's not perfect, but it's good enough. It's not perfect, but it's safe. It's not perfect, but and it's like you're like it's your bargain. So when you bargain, that means it's probably not a good idea because now you're convincing yourself, you know. And I've tried it, and it's like human relationships, you know, when you meet somebody, whether romantically or friendships, like sometimes you like try and convince why this could be a good networking opportunity or a good friendship. And in the end, it turns out that your initial gut response was always accurate. And it's the same with the projects, same thing. It's like sometimes it looks so glamorous that logically you almost cannot say no, right? So you take the rational choice because other people would think you're crazy to say no. But then it doesn't really satisfy you at the end. It probably drains you greatly as well. Because I noticed that when you're walking out your path is the most draining path. Like it really, really takes up a lot of energy and time.
I'm reminded, I was speaking to my last guest. We talked longer than we actually had the interview. Oops. But he told me the story of Jim Carrey's dad, where he said he wanted to be a comedian, but he became an accountant because it was safer, and he just basically bombed that. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I remember I've referenced him quite a few times on the show, Stephen Bartlett, where he says, if it's a no, trust that instinct and then figure out the details later. Boys, that saved me a few times.
Absolutely. You know, another cool thing that I've came up with and I teach my students in the reality masters, and this is like in the first really module where, you know, before start creating anything, we really need to sit down and figure out ourselves first. It's like because it's like sometimes it's a hot mess up there. It's like we have lots of desires, lots of emotions, lots of this, lots of that, and no clarity really at the end. So it's very important to before you start building anything or invest in your energy to understand whether it's your real pursuit or not, whether it's your true desire from your heart or not. So you won't waste your time. And what we usually do, we are not creating our wish list out of just what I wish to have, what I wish to be. We trying to come up with, you know, probably 7 whys exercise where you're trying to ask yourself why I want this. Why is it important to be 7 times? Like for instance, let's say you want X amount of income per month, right? And you ask yourself, like, why do I want particular that amount? And like, what is it going to make me feel like? And you're like, well, because I want to cover comfortable life plus have extra, right? Then you ask yourself, well, why? Why you want to have comfortable life plus extra?
Oh, so it's like a chain reaction thing. It's like,
Yep.
why? Got it.
Exactly. So at the end, what it does, it really gets to a point of what is it? Because every single material thing or experience we want, it's because we want to feel certain way. It's not because the thing that we want. It's not because the experience is gonna make us feel certain way. So we're trying to get to deep down to what is it we're trying to feel. And it's interesting when even if the person has 20, let's say desires, 20 goals, 20 dreams, all of them usually come down to 2 3 core emotions the person wants to feel, because the money is probably you want to feel secure, or you want to feel free. Like for instance, for me, most of my goals and desires are leading for me to feel free and to feel alive. I like traveling, for instance. I love traveling. It does something to me. And when I so my dream is to travel the world, very common dream, right? And when I got down to why I want that, it's because I want to, it makes me feel very free through self expression, because when you travel by yourself, for instance, somewhere, it lets you to discover who you are because you're spending a lot of time with yourself. And it's a freedom of physical movement, right? Your freedom of location and freedom of experience, and whatever you want, right? Being in nature, do whatever you want. It's very freeing experience, and with that also, it makes me feel alive. So I noticed that most of my dreams or goals or new reality I want to create is about me aiming for those feelings of freedom and feeling alive. Why is that important? Because when you start getting new opportunities, no matter how shiny they are, I teach my students you have to gauge that opportunity or maybe a new desire. You suddenly you have a goal in mind. You saw somebody got inspired, like I want that or I want to be that. What you do, because right now the world is full of distraction. The world is full of these other lives we want to live. But do we really need this? Do we really want this? Is it really for us? We don't take the time to really understand that. And so, what I say is that once you know your true core emotions, you have to gauge that new goal or new shiny thing against it, and ask yourself, does it bring you closer or takes you further away from that emotion? And so then it's easy to say yes and no. For instance, if I crave freedom, at the end of the day, I crave freedom of self expression and being location free, and somebody comes and proposes this great job promotion, or maybe a great business opportunity, but it's going to keep me locked in one city, in one place. I won't be as mobile to travel, right? Does it bring me closer or further away? Maybe it brings more money, maybe it brings the title, but on the big scheme of life of how I feel fulfilled, it takes me away from it. So no matter how shiny and glamorous that may look, I would say no, because it takes me away. It takes me further away from where I want to go. So
I know what you mean. I listened to a podcast episode with Cody Sanchez, and she's, for those who don't know, she's big on owning small businesses like laundromats, vending machines, and this and that.
I know her.
Yeah. And she was saying, like, you should own a small business. I was thinking, no, that is the last thing I want to do at the moment. Maybe in the future, but not at this current point in time. That would be absolutely suicide for me because it's not part of what I want. And
Exactly. Who you are.
yeah,
And the reason it's the interesting thing is to realize there is no right or wrong decision. They're all valid and they're all great, and you would probably become very successful at it as long as it follows your natural self, your highest self, your mission. It doesn't matter if people want to be successful or get money. Doesn't matter if you choose Shopify, dropshipping, TikTok, career, this and that. It doesn't matter what you choose. If you come with the right mindset, you'll succeed. If you don't have the right mindset in place, you won't. That's why many people succeed in one field and many fail in the same field, right? In the same business, because it's not like it's all works for all of us, right? That's why know thyself is very important, so you just save yourself time and energy and disappointment at the end, which probably going to disprove that this works, um, and actually get in the right path.
I also, speaking of job shipping, I actually did that for a bit. And I was like, yeah, can't be asked. but that's what I think that's a good thing with knowing your path or knowing what you want. I mean, personally, I figured out the general, or like the main base of what I want. Maybe not the specific details, like the very, very, very minute, but it just makes things easier. And I personally find it easier with doing this podcast and doing everything I do because it's actually what I want. It's more, I guess, to use your term, more true to myself.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel after you're doing a podcast, energy wise, mentally wise? How does it make you feel? Is it
Mm,
draining or vice versa? Is it charging you?
It's a bit of both. I'm, and some when I have the conversations are great. When I'm editing this, I'm like, "Ugh, I can't wait to delegate."
No, I understand. But on the bigger scale that you are
Oh yeah,
giving yourself a chance of doing it, does it
yeah. Overall,
overall?
love it, love it. There are days I had it earlier today. I was like, I really can't be asked to do this, but I was like, overall, I enjoy it.
Exactly. How about drop shipping? Did it feel the same?
No, it
Even if
just no, 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 no. I did the list. I was like, I am not
there you go.
sticking with this one. Go. I didn't even set anything up. I was just making a list and of stuff I could do, and I was like, yeah, the same for me.
There you go. And it's okay sometimes to try, and therefore when you have those tools to recognize in the beginning, and that's where the awareness comes in the picture. When you're really aware of yourself, where you want to go, where you are right now, it's easier to make those choices. You're not responding, right? Or you're not reacting, you're responding, right? You take the time to process. You go inside, you gauge, you talk to your higher self. Like, and sometimes it becomes so easy that you know right away because I feel like there is this lightness about certain things that are yours. They feel light. No matter how difficult they are, they feel light doing them, setting them up, where some other things logically feel right. Energetically, it feels difficult. It feels heavy, like it feels draining. So, and being drained and being tired, different things, right? We can I'm tired after a workout, but I am happy because I feel good moving my body.
I also find personally, if it's something you want, life has a way of molding itself around making that accessible. My last job, the best way I can describe was didn't like the job, but life found made it so that I had to put one thing on hold, but the main thing, which was this podcast, was it just made space for it. I don't know whether you've ever experienced that.
Absolutely, because again, you're influencing your own reality. It sounds like it does something to you, but all it does, it actually reflects you back to you. And so that's how you start looking at these synchronicities, as we call them, right? We think it's a coincidence, but they're really synchronistic chain of events that start happening around you to help you go in the direction that you want to go. That's why the evidence based reality creating is not as effective because how you can, like, if you look at those synchronicities that would took place, right, and allowed you that space for your passion, if you were trying to come up with them logically as a logic chain of events, would you be able to conceive that that would happen and take place?
No, let's be honest.
Unlikely. It's just there's so many probabilities out there. Like, just if we talk about game of statistics, there's so many probabilities or probable realities, as I like to call them. If we talk about quantum physics, uh, then you can't possibly sit there and come up with the best scenario. That's why path of least resistance is very powerful, because all you get to do is to focus on inner state and what is it you want to feel, and feel it now, and let the environment around you to reflect that back on you by reorganizing itself and showing you how. And so, as long as you take step one, step two, and focus on the inner world, the external world will mirror. It just takes a little time. It doesn't mirror right away. It can, but you have to have an unshakable belief right away. You have to switch your belief in a second and truly believe, and it will mirror right away. But because we doubt, because we still go through the logical process, it takes a little time. But the more you practice, the less you focus on fear and doubt, the more you focus on the outcome and how it's going to make you feel, the faster it starts reorganizing around you.
What about limiting beliefs and anything that's blocking any of your desires from happening?
Yeah, it's again human nature. Like, our mind likes to keep us safe. Also, we see the world and what happens to us based on our previous accumulated experience. Also, it is what others told us that could happen or can happen and will happen. So we take all that in consideration and start as we go through life, we start to be more and more careful based on certain things that we claim as negative, right? Something that's negative happened to you, which basically means that something did not go the way you want it. So therefore, right away we call it negative, bad experience because it didn't happen the way you wanted. But we don't take the time to go with the flow and find in the reason why it still happened to you, why it can still be positive. We right away default to a mechanism of black and white, like, oh, this is black, this is white, this is bad, this is good. And that what keeps us away from, floating and going with the flow and going with the idea and start taking actions because we're in paralysis analysis for a while. And then we're so drained by the paralysis analysis, fears, and doubts that we just give up without even trying. Instead of, you know what, I'd rather try and fail. And I know it's, and I'm not the most enlightened. I'm not saying that I've mastered this life and I know it all and it's easy to me. I still have fears and doubts because when I don't know something, I'm not comfortable with it. Like my current reality, I know everything about it and I'm very comfortable about it. And so it's very predictable. So for me, it gives a peace of mind about tomorrow, right? 3 or 4 years ago, my reality looked completely different. And so if you would tell me, okay, in order to get from that point A few years ago to this point B, you would need to take the steps, which I did take them, but they were very scary because I thought, oh no, I cannot 5x my income this fast. I can not learn this. Nobody would believe me. Nobody would, like, I don't know if I can succeed. And now it's easy because I already live it. So it's familiar. But back then it's unfamiliar. So of course you're scared. You don't know how that feels. That's why you have to rehearse it in advance. Like right now, I'm shifting into new reality. I have some fears and I was like, is it going to work out the way I'm like, I don't want to insist on it, but I'm like, I don't know how it feels to be an investor, and I don't know how it feels to make lots of money more passively with a lot more free time. I know how to do it with a lot of hard work and hustle, which proved to be working. But I want the other way, but I don't know how the other way feels yet. And so I'm sitting there and using my imagination and I'm using maybe some examples that I see around. I need to find an example that already works. And I'm like, okay, if he did it, I can do it too. Like I can see how this person feels, it kind of lives. And I sit down there and I'm literally in my own internal simulator stimulating that movie. I'm like, and when I wake myself up during the day with that little phrase, I see myself, I see my reality. I throw a little slide of that movie, of my desired movie, my new reality. I throw that slide in, and I'm like, okay, and so and then I move on to my task. It's not like I'm sitting there the whole day, trying to be aware, but I'm slipping in this new things into the day to day life, and I'm also simulating the inner feeling. Hardest part is to believe and wait for things to happen themselves because it's so unnatural to us these days when we're told that we have to earn our spot under the sun, we have to compete, it has to be hard, you have to suffer. And so sometimes you can't just wait, you start like, I should do more, can't just come by itself, you know
Are you
so
referring to Andrew Tate there? Because that's something he says.
well, I'll tell you, I've been a subscriber for of hustle culture for a while. I think for me, Gary Vaynerchuk did it in my 20s, so I was hashtag hustle, like I would literally put the hashtag hustle under my posts or whatever I was doing back then because I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That totally, it's logically, it makes total sense. But did it really got us anywhere other than burnout and not having a good sleep? As long as you move into the right direction, I would say it's all well and good because obviously you need to put action in place. It won't just happen by the thought alone. But again, you don't want to be just running around there like, chicken with no head, pursuing all of this, not sleeping, and thinking that it's going to make you successful without really digging deep down inside of yourself first. Otherwise, you just waste years of your life.
It also might not happen. Funny enough, that you bring this up because I was listening to a slightly older episode of Joe Rogan's podcast with these YouTubers that go to haunted places and record it. Why they do it is beyond me. But he said some people will read something like The Secret or Neville. How do you say his surname?
Neville
Goddard.
Goddard.
Yeah, that's it. Goddard. And they'll just basically think it, sit around, and it doesn't happen because they don't put any action into place.
Yeah, there are three components to reality crafting. It's you have to move yourself in a way through intention and energy. You move in yourself and you take action also. That's like a physically moving yourself. So you move yourself energetically through thoughts and beliefs. You move yourself physically, taking in actions. You're claiming it through the action. And then you move your reality. What means move your reality? Means you're just sending and perceiving reality how you want it now to be perceived. So you perceive and you're looking at the reality through the lens of an investor or a successful podcaster or a successful business owner or maybe a happy mother or whatever is that your film should look like. So that's kind of like three components. So one is not good without the other. You can't just sit and think about it and not charge it with action. Also, you cannot just kind of perceive it and feel it again without taking some action and working on your limiting beliefs, right? Like these three components kind of have to happen at the same time, but action is really just follow. And I think when you're excited about something, you want to do something about it, right?
Quick one. Since you've already liked this episode, why not to leave a comment as well? All right. Now back to the episode. Do you do it where I'm not going to say how I do it exactly, but where you kind of go, oh, that's such and such over there, or so and so's doing this, or this little thing or whatever is running around the kitchen or something like. I don't know how to describe it without revealing like revealing my cards, or I don't know how to describe that, but you know what I mean. You kind of say this is happening, although it's not happening, but that's the thing you want.
Exactly. So that's what simulating really is. You know, even if it's not happening, you're pretending that it's happening. Um, you know, it's that's what the vision boards, right, are for. You know, it's kind of like you look and you feel like it's happening. Some people, if they want, I know this guy in this same space, and he said that he wanted a particular watch. So he basically bought a dupe of this watch and would wear it and look at it and imagine how he's wearing this watch he wanted. But the thing is, the brain cannot recognize the difference. It's again, neuroscience is telling us this that the brain cannot differentiate between a true experience that you're living and a fantasized one. Like if you're showing, if you're feeling something, if you're charging your experience with some emotion, whether it's on your internal screen inside of your mind or it's externally, if you charge it with emotion, your brain think it's happening and your neurons is actually responding to it. It's funny because the neurons actually grow. They have the synapses, right? The connections that they grow between each other and connect with. But this little thing, I forgot how they called this kind of little branches from the neurons. They are stimulated via electrical signal, which is our thought or feeling. And it's not physical, right? Thought and feeling is not physical, but nonetheless, it sends an energetical impulse and it stimulates that neuron. And when it stimulates it, it starts growing out this extension. And if it's stimulated enough, long enough, this extension grows and connects with the extension of another neuron. And this is how synapses form. But sometimes also what happens, let's say you thought about something for a while, right? You've been thinking about it, charging it with emotion. So this little branch grew out. But then if you stop thinking about it and stop charging it, it deteriorates. It actually disappears over time. It won't form anymore. It won't grow anymore. So that just tells you that when you are creating your reality, I like to call you have to beam it. You know, like you're like a little beamer here. You're beaming it with your thought, with your emotion, with your feeling. whatever you choose throughout the day, right? In meditation with your visualization, you're beaming it. And so here is you and your current reality, and this is multiple probable realities that all exist. Whatever you can imagine already exists. All we have to do is to grab the one that we want or connect to the one what we want. So point A, point B is where you're going. So how you establish that connection is energetic. So through your focus and your awareness, through your thinking, emotions, blah, 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 right? So when you're thinking and charging it through your thoughts and emotions, you're beaming it. You're like beaming, I'm going here, not here, not here. I don't want to be homeless. I'm not going to think about it. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be an unsuccessful podcaster. I'm not thinking about it. So you're not giving the focus to that. You're giving the focus to what you want. And sure enough, the timeline starts to rearrange itself where it starts to become more and more probable until it becomes actually a new reality. And that's how the shifting is happening, right? It's not like, like maybe in a fiction movie it could like happen in a second, but it takes just a little time in our physical world. But nonetheless, that's how I like to see it. Like it's like I'm beaming the energy there and I'm connecting with that probability because that's the one that I want.
I've been having a problem with I'm not in the mood to watch any entrepreneur content on YouTube. I know, very bad. But that's the life I want to live. And then I always find like this resistance to it. So how would someone like me overcome that resistance? Say they got some other issue where they want to be a race car driver, but they cannot stand driving. Like,
I see.
yeah, you see, it's like your actions do not align with what you want, but that's what you
There
actually want.
Right. Well, there could be two reasons. Perhaps you are in. First of all, is to understand why, right? Why
Mm,
you don't, why your body doesn't create energy and excitement towards that, and it could be two reasons. Either you sabotage yourself
mm-hmm,
because of limiting beliefs. So somehow deep down, you feel like it's not worth it, or it's not gonna be good enough, or it's gonna be maybe a waste, or you have nothing good to say, and it would be not interesting. So it could be that, and then if you feel that, that would sabotage your actions. Or if it's not that, then B, you're insisting how it should happen. Like we think, okay, if you know like a great podcaster and he's doing ABC, and you're like, sure, for me to do the same thing, I have to replicate ABC like him. But maybe he enjoys to do ABC, and maybe you should do ABD and skip the C. Maybe it's just not you. And so, but then you start insisting that it has to be this way and it cannot be other way. Is there any other way it can happen? Or is there any other way other people are doing it without necessarily doing YouTube or whatever, so it could be that you're trying to insist on something that you shouldn't instead of just following that natural call and what gives you that energy, what makes you excited, just focus that on that route and maybe use your creativity to come up with something else as well.
hmm. What is the reason? And for me, there's a couple. Number one, I tend to find the content very boring. There is either hyper edited or I'm just there like,
There you go.
That's one. Number two, I think it's because I've found what I wanted, and a lot of the content's kind of skewed towards beginners. So it's like, here's 6 business you can do to make 500 a day. Here's 7 you can do from the comfort of your own home. It's like, yeah, it's very nice. I'm kind of over that stage. And it's also C. I know this is going to sound arrogant, but I genuinely believe I could make better content. The problem is I've never built a business before. It'd be like me trying to do real estate content where I've never owned a rental property before. So I think there's quite a bit. Oh, and D, I get really energized to the point I don't go to sleep at night. And just go knock
Right.
on a bed.
I truly understand that, which could be a good sign because if you're so energized by the idea, it means you're going in the right direction. Again, I think it's important to do that initial work to know thyself, and you need to understand crystal clear what are you chasing, what kind of feelings, like what is it at the end that you want in terms of feeling. Like, okay, you're a great podcaster. What is it? Why you want to be that? Like, what is it going to make you feel like? And start cultivating this feeling now, because there's other ways to cultivate that feeling, and see if there's any other clues that universe can send you. Because there's certain ways our opportunities open up as we walk. We cannot see them right away. For instance, the investor thing, right? I just started to shift in there in the end of June, as I started my first course, and I was like, I'll do it with my students because I do have kind of an identity in mind. So when I figured out that I want freedom, I want feeling alive, and that entitles me like traveling and working less, making more, right? And then the Kiyosaki quadrant came into my mind about the investor. Like Kiyosaki wrote this book, the quadrant, the financial quadrant of success, and he said that people are only belong to these four categories: self-employed, employee, business owner, or investor. And so it doesn't matter what you do, you fall in one of these categories for income earning, right? And he said the true freedom comes really when you're an investor, because when a business owner, you really have to sweat, and you're the one who takes the risks and work 24/7 so your business grows. When you're self-employed, it's not always guaranteed, like it's, you have to really find clients, right, for your service. And when you work for someone else, it's the same thing. Maybe you're not passionate, or people can change their mind, let you go, so you're not really in charge, and you still trade in your time. But when you're an investor, your money work for you. It's not you work for money. It's the only quadrant that kind of allows you that freedom. So I was like, oh, it'd be interesting. But I have no clue. I have no large capital to like become like because for me, investor is somebody who has large capital, spare capital to go and invest. I have a comfortable life. I've achieved good success for myself. But for me, investors, I don't have investors around me. I've never been one. So, but I started to, and I didn't know how to go about it other than to simulate how it's going to feel. It's like, okay, how it's going to feel when the day comes in and I don't need anything to do, and there is still money coming in. What would I choose to do? What would I do that day? And so when I had a day off, or when I had a slow morning, I would say, yeah, this day is already today, and this is how I'm going to feel, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to buy, some of these things. And then within 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, the investing opportunities came to me. So I invested in nine blockchain startups with a group of people, and together with the fund, which was a strange chain of coincidences or synchronicities. I watched an interview of somebody on the consciousness, and I looked what that person does for a living. Like I watched some other of his YouTube, and he was into crypto world, and he was interviewing other crypto founders. And I'm not talking about buying Bitcoin. I'm not talking about that. I'm not like buying Bitcoin and sit on it, right? Because it's not really a true path, or it's not gonna takes will take a while, right? I'm talking about startups, right, where people have an idea and it sounds to be profitable, and you get to be in the round ABC of investment money for some return. And so, anyway, one of these people in this interview was associated with the fund, and they had a pool of people who could actually buy a portion of this fund, of round, not unfortunately not round A, but like round C, for instance, which is still a great return. But anyway, I connected with the person. I went through the interview with them and stuff like that, and hence months later, from not knowing how it feels like, or how it's going to be like, or where do we even go, opportunity found me. I wasn't looking for it. I was just doing my daily thing. I got excited about this consciousness video, far away from money subject, but just I followed the breadcrumbs, and it came to me. Same for trading, let's say, same thing. Like 3 months I'm doing it, and I'm loving it too. I have so much energy for it, which is crazy, because if you tell me 3 months ago, 4 months ago, that the logical route, I would be like, I'm not seeing myself. I never looked at the charts. Like, this is, how am I even going to get excited about it? Like, maybe people do things for money. I can see that, but like having excitement about it, liking it. But here I am, like 3 months in, I see the result. I see where it can go, and now, 3 months later, now, I actually know how it's going to happen. I'm not even in doubt anymore. Like, all these opportunities came by itself. I took an action. I kept on visualizing the end result. I kept on simulating my feelings of freedom person. Like, yeah, I have this abundance coming in, and I'm traveling, and I'm doing all these things. And surely, slowly enough, the opportunities came. And now I confirm for myself that it's indeed happening. And the moment you confirm logically that this is happening, boom, the evidence is there because your mind started to see artifacts and evidence of this to be fact. And mind believes in facts. And when you have those confirmations and you deliberately looking for them, it becomes a fact. It's no longer a fiction. And that's how you start overcoming those doubts. It's just, I know it's a matter of time for me and I have to follow the journey. It's also been very interesting to do this because I came up with a lot of doubts and fears too, because it was like, whoa, 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 it happens so fast. I was trying to do more instead of just relaxing and go with the flow. I started to worry instead of just relaxing. So I made some mistakes too, but I'm learning. And actually, I'm polishing my course that way. But I'm like, oh, I'm teaching my students this, but I'm actually catching myself doing the same mistakes. I'm telling them not to do. But it's yeah, it's fun. So sometimes it's just like that. You would not know. You just have to relax. And in your case, I'm saying you're going to have your path. It's not going to be maybe ABC. This dude is doing it, but it's good. It's working for him, but maybe A and B is enough for you. Or maybe there's something else that'll open up over time, you know, that you will make your own strategy of growing.
Yeah, because I was just thinking with the my entrepreneur problem was, hang on, I might not enjoy the videos, I enjoy the books. So that's that problem solved. But I also thought as well with me, it's well, a year ago, well, a less than 2 years, well, just 2 years ago, I had no idea podcasts exist, and now here I'm running my own. It's a hell of a blast.
Yes. And hey, clapping to you because also it's funny because before you reached out, this is like my first podcast interview or invitation on reality shifting subject. I've done some other talks or interviews before about something else. Uh, I was just literally a few days before you reached out. I thought, it would be nice to start getting some, some media and talk to other people about my stuff, versus, just myself on Instagram. But I was like, oh, I don't have time. You see, and I started to think how. I'm like, yeah, but I have to, allocate some time and all these things that started to make it heavy. So I just let it go. I'm like, would be nice. And just like, boop, you're DMing it, and you were not, like some there's scams, right? And people DMing you stuff, but you're like, hey Ina, like you actually called me by my first name because it's not like robotic response. I'm like, wow, I got so excited, I'm like, wow, this is happening. Like with my only 2,000 subscribers, there's a person who thought that it's worth to hear me speak about the subject. So you confirmed me that what I am building and I'm doing is the right path. And yeah, maybe I'm not reaching out to myself or I'm not getting 100 invitations a day. Nonetheless, it happened. You reached out. Here we are. We're talking about this. This is very real right now. But before it was just a vision, it was not real. I had no evidence that it will happen, but it did. So no, it's very cool. So I kind of manifested you maybe popping out, inviting me. You seem to be real.
I think it helps that I've got the clips and some stuff on Instagram as well. So,
It's working, man. You're my proof.
thanks. Have you ever had someone come to you to shift reality, but not not in this reality, but they want to shift into a fantasy setting like Star Wars, Star Trek, Pokemon, something from a video game, the Marvel universe? Have you ever had
Not
that?
yet.
Oh,
So if you want to be first one, I don't know.
no.
But hey, I feel like, I had good friends. They were actually making soap. They had the little entrepreneurship of, they were making really cool handmade soap and they were very successful locally here in Houston, selling them at the pop-up markets and whatnot, local stores. But they were obsessed with the what is it called? the Japanese cartoons.
Anime.
Anime, exactly, anime, and they also liked particular type of music. I can't remember what type of music, but they were wanted to make the soap and kind of make business out of it and make money. So what they did, they combined everything together. So their soap was music themed, and every name of the soap was from these different players or bands, and it would carry the scent that supposedly would be representation of that artist. And what also they were doing these special editions with anime characters, and they would kill it at animate shows. So they would go around when they could around the country for these specialty shows for people who are into this thing, and they would set up and sell like special editions soap, like the bath bombs and whatnot, and they were killing. And they would dress up. There would be other people dressing up like that. So they kind of had got to live their fantasy in the real world that way, you know?
That's quite creative. You have to give them that.
I'm telling you, it's like we are given a gift of creativity. We're just not using it enough. We're just, and it's not our fault. We're just when we're kids, I played with no toys, and I would play with sticks and rocks, and that would be my imaginary kingdom and world, right? And it was just as real. It was just as fun, and we're kind of losing it over time because of like reality and logics, and you have to be careful and this and that, and don't fantasize and dream more realistic as start hearing. So but you literally, there's no strategy. You can sit down in meditation, get quiet, think of a solution or a solution you're trying to come up with, and you can just sit on that subject and observe it. You don't even need to come up with solution. You just observe it. The solution will come itself, and it will be very creative.
And also out the blue at times.
Oh yeah, like in the shower or when you're doing something, right? I mean, the sometimes best things come when you're not prepared, when you don't have a piece of paper in front of you. True.
And then you forget it.
And then that's true. But that's the thing. We are plugging into the consciousness, to the energy around us. We're with this conscious field. We're plugging in for a while, and we download certain things. Like it comes like an instant download, and it's either you do something with it or not. And if you got a butterfly, you should really execute as soon as possible before you're going to procrastinate and before fears and doubts are going to start playing their role. You have to really put it to execution, because so the action is really the best solution against fear and doubt. It's actually start taking action. It's put it to action right away. No matter how prepared you are, as long as you got that butterfly, that initial response, like, yeah, man, feels excited. Everything I did, even this last year, I've done a lot of things that did not make sense. And every single thing, like, boy, it paid off. Like, not, and I'm not talking about even material goods. I'm talking about the emotional satisfaction of doing those things that were completely irrational. But I've allowed myself. It's like, who is there to allow or not? It's the voice of my parents in my head. It's the voice of my friends, but that's really just an excuse. That's just me in my head, using my parents, using my friends as an excuse. But that's me allowing or not allowing to myself. So I just started to allow myself more, do more, make irrational choices as long as I got the butterfly.
Yeah, as long as it's not completely reckless.
Well, you have to be mindful. Definitely, it has to. As I don't know how is the saying. It has to be for highest good of yourself and other people, right? It's not shouldn't be mean and harm. Like we don't want to manipulate reality for the bad, right? But at the same time, you're the only person who would understand you. Like whatever you're doing, doesn't matter how crazy. And again, not saying unsafe. I'm saying unrealistic or crazy it sounds, as long as it makes sense to you, that's good enough.
What would you say to those who are just too afraid to take action?
Take a piece of paper and write down the worst case scenario that could happen. Like, what will happen if you take action? And then the worst case scenario should be followed by recovery plan. Like, what would be the worst that could happen? And if there is any recovery from it. And it's interesting because when we don't phrase it, we don't take the time to get very specific. This like constant loop of fears keeps recircling. But when we actually can verbalize it and maybe even measure it, Like, okay, I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to lose this much time, or this much money, or whatever. And then we're like, what's the plan of recovery? Well, I can find another job, or I can, I'm just going to try it for 3 months and I can always find a new job, or whatever. I can always rekindle with my friend. This is my project time right now. So when you're going to measure it and like make it like that, you're going to realize that it's not so bad, and there's always a recovery from it. It's just you make it sound worse than it is, So, um, but yeah, you just have to get familiar with your fear, why you're fearing yourself. Another thing that fears can lead to is to limiting beliefs. It's so fear can be a useful exercise because the fear might be that, well, I'm not good enough. That's why I will fail. So this is your opportunity to take that and to start rephrasing and start feeling differently. Start saying, I am enough. And this is how I am enough feels like. So start your days where frequently throughout the day you feel really worthy of everything. Or what I also like to do, another exercise, take a piece of paper and put up to, or however, at least 20 to 50 items of why you deserve this to happen, why you deserve this, and how the world will benefit from it. And you'll be surprised that that little thing that you are trying to do has so much benefit to yourself, and you are worthy of it so much that you'll start doubting. Like your doubts are just like on a scale of benefit and how the world will benefit, because the ripple effect is huge. I'm not there to change the world, but if I can change my life for better, physically, financially, mentally, people will see me different. People will see me in that new person, and they will be curious what I did. And this is my opportunity to show them, not to insist on my beliefs, but just to offer them an opportunity to explore what I did. And sure, maybe a few people will adapt it as well, and they will change their life, and then they will show the example of what's possible to other people. And this is how we collectively can change the world, but just changing your own life, you know? And that's so worth it then to give yourself the time and space to explore and to fail if necessary. It's okay. Or maybe to pivot, or maybe it will show you the other direction that you should go. It's okay. And maybe I know I talk too much, but one last thing I like to ponder, it might sound crazy. Life and
Go
death is
on. Go on.
yes, life and death is very, very good subject for me. And I ponder on the theme of death often. Before you guys judge me, hear me out. When I'm getting very paralyzed with fears and doubt, or failures that I could have, or maybe that I'm going to be unsuccessful in this field, right? In certain field, and so this project will fail. I have business right now with Cravings that it's okay. It's not famous, but we're doing great for the small two women business. Um, I think of myself, if when I'm gone, like, would it really matter? Like, with all these worries, all these doubts, all this misery, all this suffering, was it really worth suffering in your own head unnecessary that much over these things? There's so many people who did marvelous things in this world and we don't know them. They're all long gone, like we know Mozart, okay, but I'm just saying that we probably had so many other talented composers, right? Or people who are somewhere in the village are singing so well, but nobody knows them, you know? So, but does that make them unsuccessful? Does it make them a failure because nobody knows them? That was their path, So don't be so hard on yourself. At the end of the day, we're not here forever. Just realize that we're all going towards the same outcome. This lifetime will come to an end. Do you really want to spend your best years suffering and doubting and fearful, and instead of just trying and living while you can, while you're young, and it doesn't matter even the age, right? But you're never going to be safe enough. There's always going to be next big and next somebody to compare yourself against. But I'm sure you're doing so much better um, compared to so many people right now who have less opportunities and everything else. So just sometimes you have to zoom out and don't be so clingy to your little bubble. Zoom out and let yourself free, let yourself go, just be, just try, just live. It's okay, you know?
I mean, the way I like to phrase it is, yeah, you can suppress yourself, you can do all that, but you're the one who has to live in that mess.
Exactly. Exactly. So I don't know what's best. Is it to slowly die because you suppress yourself and your soul is slowly dying, but then you're comforted because there's predictability to your future tomorrow? Or it's to try and fail, or and again, fail is so subjective, right? You can call failure anything, but is it really true, or is it you making it sound? For instance, even a little example, with Good Cravings is a small business that I run for 7, 8 years now. And, we have an e-commerce store and we make our own protein bars. We ship directly to consumer. And, when I started it, I thought I'm going to be on shelves of grocery store, this multi-million company, big deal, in just a year. And here I am like 7, 8 years later. It's successful, like I said, for what we are, just two women company, but it's no near where I thought in the beginning. And then I even thought, so what? Like who said that that's better? Because there's so much headache and there's so much tension when you start competing and dealing with so much middleman. Now we're just petite. Where I can close and come here. I can travel. Like it's so flexible for me. It doesn't drain me that much. And also about 3 years ago, I was considering like, there's certain points you're like, maybe I should just throw a towel, right? Like just call it a day. Maybe it just didn't work out, but it never got to a point where it was dying off. The business keeps growing by itself. And then what happened, really, the catalyst was my mental shift about 3 years ago. I think it was during COVID time, so maybe four, when I was not sure, our online sales were not as big as today. And I was like selling primarily off like live events and fairs and markets and whatnot. And I thought, okay, that's it. We're going to go belly up. And then I remember actually that moment, that day I was walking and I'm like, okay, be it. I'm like, what are we going to do next? I'm like, I'll see when it comes what I'll do next. But you know what? At least when I'm old and I'm like looking back at my life, I can say that was nice 7 years of that project. That project was wild, was cool. I tried it for 7 years and it was what it was. It had a 7 year longevity and I had fun. I learned a thing or two. It brought me maybe to my next step in life, maybe just a stepping stone. But nonetheless, I would not regret I never tried it. Imagine living with the regret that, oh, what if? But what if? Why I didn't give to myself? And once I realized that in that instance, I completely accepted that it would might fail. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay if it's actually stopped if it stops tomorrow. Like if we just close. And it was such a huge relief from my own judgments of myself, because who else was judging my success? Like we're not even a known company in the country. It was me judging whether I'm successful or not, whether I'm going to be a failed business person or not. And then I was like, I just let it be how it was, and I completely let go of control. I'm like, let it run by itself. And what do you think? The online sales just grew like just themselves organically. I don't know how it grows. Like I haven't paid any paid ads. I didn't do any marketing that's paid. I only have like a couple of girls on Instagram that promote us because they love our product. And that's it. And that's enough to where I can still work full time. I can do my hobbies and it's just literally just grows itself, has enough income to pay the bills, to pay the salaries, and sponsor its own growth. I don't even have any debts or I didn't put my own investments to it. The company grows by itself, slowly but surely so. And that's just the outcome of letting it go. Like I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, what my decision will be, but I know I will be at peace with it because, like I said, bigger scheme of life is here to enjoy and to move on from things, just to move on from what didn't work, didn't fit, the fast that you can. Don't dwell on that. You don't know why that happened. Start labeling everything that it's positive. You know it happened because it's positive for you. And once you claim that it's positive, it will show up why it was positive for you sooner than later. I guarantee.
I was just thinking earlier, I had a little bit of a setback with this podcast, and I was like, oh. But then if it's going back to what we were saying, if it's something you actually want, you tend to see it more as like a stepping stone. If it's something you don't want, it's like there's a lot more frustration behind it. It's sort of detachment you're talking about.
Exactly. Detachment is that letting go. And again, not to divert, but one thing that I think law of attraction or the secret is missing is they don't explain what detachment or letting go really means. It's we kind of understand, but kind of don't. And so in the Reality Masters program that I teach, we talk about importance. Importance is what gets in a way. When you make something disproportionately important, you start worry about it and you start expecting. And so you have to keep things as neutral as possible, even if it's your mission, if it's your podcast or my business or my investment portfolio. I have to keep the importance down. I just have to know I'm walking the right path. Things are happening as they should. I I don't need to worry about it because as soon as it becomes super important, that's where you cannot detach and let go. You're holding it by its throat and trying to control what you do and how it should be. And because if it's this or that, I think I'm going to fail it. That's what I'm afraid. But turn the importance down. I like to think of it as a lever. Like I am sometimes when I'm thinking in my head, it's like a lever that I'm taking and I'm like from 100 to like a zero. Okay, keep the importance down. It's not like I'm saying like be careless, it's not that, right? It's just like keep the importance down. It's not everything. All right. It's just a part of who you are in your life. Just go take the actions. But yeah, when it's become super important, what happens, you disharmonize the natural forces because nature tries to be in balance. Nature works in balance. Like everything works in balance. The way that, if the seed of the flower is growing and it tries to go through the crack because the sun is here, is going to take the path of least resistance. It's not going to go this way to earn its right to be under the sun, and it has to suffer first before it gets to the sun. No, nature takes the path of least resistance. It's the balance. So when you start shaking the boat, you're disbalancing your own path with with the worry. And we want to just kind of keep it cool, keep it excited, but kind of on a neutral side. Don't just worry that much. So keep the importance down. And that means to let go. You're doing it, it's going to happen. Let it be. Don't hold it by the throat. Keep the importance down. So the natural balance can be maintained as you walk into it.
Sounds like a paradox, doesn't it?
Every, paradox is like a keyword to everything in life because everything works exactly the opposite of what we taught. Everything. It's like when I'm exploring this concept and when I actually put them to practice, the most important is like not don't believe, just try, and observe. Just be mindful and have that awareness to observe. And you realize that it's like everything is just a complete opposite of what we've been taught to, or two things can live at the same place, your excitement and your anxiety, right, coexist together. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like even that seed or the flower example, right? That's how nature grows. And for us, what people tend to tell you, if you tell them I'm going to take a path of least resistance, that means what? You're lazy, you don't want to to be disciplined, you are just looking for easy ways, and all of this, it's negative in our logical rational mind, isn't it? It's like, okay, like, yeah, but nature doesn't try harder. It's just try as work with what it has. Tries to conserve energy, by the way. Energy, nature conserves energy for the best outcome. It doesn't disperse energy left and right like we do. We're running around all the time dispersing our energy. Then no wonder we don't have it to build our dream at the end of the day. Our awareness is hijacked by all the distractions and other people. Our energy is donated to wrong places and wrong events. So yeah, so we start to kind of slowly recollect ourselves, like regroup basically.
Really quickly, since you have already liked and commented on this episode, why not subscribe to the main channel? Not sure whether to ask this question, but I'll sod it. If we're all connecting with energy and we're all creating our realities after death, could we then go and use that same energy to create the life we want to live after death?
You mean like the life that we want in this life? Or,
Afterwards, in
or
the afterlife sort of situation.
yeah, so is the question if we go back to source, like our energy goes back to the source energy, right? Like if we go to create a new life, is that the question?
I have no idea what source energy is.
Well, whatever you can call it afterlife, right? What
Mm.
the you know what that's what the religious terminology is, the afterlife, right? The source energy. I like to call it. It's like okay, let's say there is a bundle of energy that's everything, right? And then you're just a speck of it. You're just extension of it. That's your soul, right? And then you're just like that microcosm of a macrocosm. So, all right, the body's dropped off, like okay, you release the body, you die, so it goes back to, let's say, this pool of energy, right? The energy source basically. And then your energy doesn't disappear, right? That's one thing that doesn't disappear, so it just changes its form. So how I like to see it is that everything is consciousness that experiences itself in a different form. So the consciousness experiences itself as me, another human living this life. It experiences you in your form and your agenda through life. It experiences itself as this chair, as this rock, as this wave. Everything is kind of energy down at the end of it, right? So it experiences itself in different shapes and forms. So it's
Uh,
very creative.
It can be. I was. I've been reading this book. I had the author on. I have him on Thursday of this recording, and he had this example. It's all to do with reality shifting and using it to get the life you want as well. But he there was a bit in there where there's a scientist who said we're all connected to all the possible realities via our thoughts, but the thing is we experience one thought and our mind is just projecting the other thoughts which is actually happening. I can't remember where I heard this. It was probably a decade ago at this point where the thoughts we think are actually happening. We just don't physically interact with it besides thinking about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know what? I kind of familiar or heard of this concept, maybe in a different form. That you know how we always try to control our thoughts, and they say that thoughts are really something that you don't control. They just emerge from nowhere and disappear to nowhere. It's like it's just ongoing thing based on information accumulation. So it's not like you are constant. Like, would you know your next thought right now? Would you call it out? No, it just comes by itself. And then you observe it, and the mind observes the thought, and the ego claims it as its own. That's what kind of the concept is. It's like the thoughts are just coming as a stream, uncontrollable stream. Then you observe it, and the minute the ego observes it, it claims it as its own. And then you think that all you're thinking is your own thoughts. So that's kind of like a deeper thinking of like, okay, don't worry so much about the thought flow, let it flow, but start injecting maybe because you don't control that flow, right? You just observe it. There's some information accumulation that happened in your lifetime, and your mind is going to produce only what it has to build with, right? So now don't fight that. It's just when you are aware, just start inserting some of the things that you actually consciously can produce, which is a new thought or a new affirmation or a new fact about yourself and you knowing about yourself or a new about your life, about your reality, whatever. So kind of goes along those lines of like, yeah, don't fight that flow. It's you don't predict it. You don't. It's just it's always there. It's just that's why meditation trying to stop those. Like you just kind of let it flow. Those thoughts. You just become an observer.
Yeah, I never really got on with meditation. I did do a 21-day one. It was like a law of attraction one. This was a few years ago now. Yeah, just personally, I never got on with it.
Yeah, I would say, for reality shifting or let's say just to create the life that you want, you don't have to meditate. Nobody needs to meditate necessarily. It's very effective instrument for awareness muscle building because in order to create something new, remember we talked about you have to wake up first to where you are. And when you wake up and aware, that's how you start consciously now thinking, consciously feeling something new. Meditation helps with awareness building. but it's not necessarily the necessary thing. If you can make yourself wake up throughout the day a few times and start injecting those new feelings and thoughts, start consciously produces versus subconsciously dragging through this with the scenario, that's enough. But it's hard for many of us, and therefore meditation, it's like going and building your quads or building your muscles. It's like just it's a tool, it's an exercise. It just helps to do it faster and better, where you awareness becomes easier for you because that's what you do. You have to sit down, stop the flow of thoughts, become an observer, and just be aware.
Everyone, where can people find you if they want to learn more about reality shifting?
Yes, right now it's all on Instagram. I do have a YouTube, but I don't have like a longer video format. It's actually something that I would love to do in the future. But Instagram, it's Inna dot Aracri, my last name Aracri. And that's where I post my content, and that's where you can learn about the course. Please DM me. I like chatting with people and talk about this stuff and welcome more interview invitations.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed learning all about reality shifting with Iana, then you will enjoy this episode that I did with Dot, who is a augmented reality artist. But if you are looking for something a little different, then I have this episode with Brian S. Farah, where we talk all about voice acting and AI.